Next time on the Masonic Roundtable.
Welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner, sometimes too friendly. As a reminder, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, we love seeing you live every Thursday night in Facebook and YouTube land, and the comments are always fun. Can't get to them all, but remember, your comments may show up on the show, so check yourself. And as always, if you can't catch us live, catch us in the replay or in your favorite podcasting app. My name is John Ruark. I'm a past master of the Patriot Lodge number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia. And I think I saw Jason Richards. There he is.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. Greetings and salutations. Jason Richards, past master of Acacia Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia, and member of Lafayette Lodge number 79 in Zanesville, Ohio.
Nice. Worshipful Joe Martinez.
What?
How you doing?
Hey. Hello and good evening.
Said like a past master.
Yes, I want to get there so badly.
He is not a past master anymore. He had that title revoked.
I know. Jason made me remove my past master keychain from my key ring.
He's not joking. I did.
He did. And it really tied the keys together. But yeah, Joe Martinez, once again, worshipful master of Manassas Lodge number 182, Manassas, Virginia, member of Things and Stuff. And as always, damn glad to be here.
Woo. And last but not least, the Wizard of RJ.
That's right.
Wizard of Arge.
The Wizard of Arge. Robert Johnson.
I get it.
Yeah, you get it. I had a guy at work who used to just call me Arge, and he would like write my memos to me, and he would say to Arge, ARJ, like just, Anyway, past master Waukegan 78 and past master Space Novum 1183, where I am the sitting secretary for both.
For life.
Yeah, probably for life. It's gonna be great. That's the culture. That's
Just
my
like Joe's going to be master for life.
That's the culture.
If you dream it, you can be it.
So we'll start on. There's a dream. There'll be a national sort of like floating charter lodge that the Grandmaster Conference acknowledges us, and Joe's the perpetual master, and I'll be the perpetual secretary, and we'll figure it out from there.
And I'll be the perpetual Tyler.
There
And
you
that's
go.
the only lodge that'll be left come 2040. So,
That's true.
That's right.
That is so true.
yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, before we move on, let's give a special shout out
Oh, never mind. Go ahead.
to the patrons who support the show. You guys are awesome. Keep us going for many, many years past 2040. I bet Robert $1 that we'd make it past 2040.
Well, at least we will. Yeah.
I sure hope so. I'm trying hard.
I'll still be master. So it'll be good.
Nice.
Tell you what, it's officially documented. I will do a presentation in your lodge in 2041. When you're master, not if.
It's a date.
You have to make it like Highlander themed. There can only be one.
Nice.
Yeah. Because there'll just be
Awesome.
one lodge left.
Head over to patreon.com/the Masonic Roundtable. Woo.
Yeah.
Y'all rock.
Awesome. You know what also rocks? That time of the show we have
Tarot card of the week.
beautiful.
Great.
Thanks.
All right. This week, we have the OK Tarot.
Is it good?
It's not perfect, but it's okay. This deck has me laughing my hind end off. It is so self-aware and so, irreverential about itself. It is craptastic, and it knows it. It is hilarious, and has become one of my all-time favorites.
Nice.
Yeah.
If it wasn't yours, I could see Robert also digging the vibe.
I love the idea of just okay, for a number of reasons, but just because you're you. I think that's the Mr. Rogers in all of us. It's okay.
It's okay.
You're special because of who you are.
That's right.
So you want to know how the deck feels about how we're talking about it?
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel?
Oh,
5 of Cups.
5 of Cups. Isn't that 2 down or 3 down, 2 up?
Yeah.
I
I don't
Focus on
think
the-
the deck appreciates our levity.
It's disappointed in us.
It has a stern disapproval.
It is
It's looking on
got
like,
despair.
ugh.
But like, if you see the Hermit card, it's okay.
It's Scary Neil says, just okay.
Wonderful. Yeah, I like it. I like it.
Here's the moon.
My
It's
kids
like
could draw
weed
better
drew
than that.
these. It's like weed hand drew these.
Yes.
Yes. The
Except-
magician.
That's
my-
cooler than
My 11-year-old hand drew these.
Justice.
Oh, the kerning would kill my OCD.
Yeah, that's part of what makes it just okay.
It's just okay.
Hat looks like a butt.
yeah.
Just saying. Oh, death. Terrifying.
Oof. Yeah. Nice.
Is it
gonna-
is it a fang?
It's a
Is it
fang.
a scythe? Is it a shark?
Could be
Could be. Could be all
one
three.
fin up.
All four.
Looks like my teenager's notebooks from school.
So how do we? Okay, so regret, failure, disappointment, pessimism.
I heart
Yes.
RJ.
We're gonna put all that into
despair.
lodge culture, despair.
Despair.
Ambivalence.
It's going to dovetail nicely, I
Is
think.
the Five
right?
of Cups really about
No.
ambivalence? Because it's
No, I guess you're right.
It's a distinctly negative emotion.
It is, but you're focusing on the negative when there's positive around you.
Yes.
Well, I think we're going to focus on the negative, at least for the first part, and then talk about how you can turn these things into positives, right? Because that's one of the big issues in Freemasonry in general, right? Is culture, right? There's some
It's the best world card I've ever seen.
Much
Yeah.
symbolism, much
Oh, I
wow.
love it.
ridiculous.
This is such a fun deck. I absolutely love it.
Moving on past Jason's tarot deck review. Let's get into tonight's topic, which is lodge culture.
Card of the week. Oh,
It's a follow-on for what we talked about last week, and I started going down a little bit rabbit hole about how important culture is and how it's defined, and then more importantly, how you can design a better culture. So I wanted to dive deeper, play with some toys, and actually show you how we can actually deliberately plan for and design a better lodge culture.
What is culture?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Joe.
well,
because
first you take a petri dish,
the little
and then you
Q-tip,
Q-tip
swab
and
swab
swab
something.
it, and
Mhm.
heat it.
then you get a bunch of little past masters that start congregating in it.
They start replicating.
They start replicating, and then they become like the council of past grandmasters.
Mm.
Very cultured.
And then if you've
Set
seen
of
The
organ-
Last
oh.
of Us, you know what happens then.
Nice.
Yeah.
I don't think
All
we're
right.
talking about that kind of culture.
Not quite. Not
No.
that one for this week.
Okay.
But before we define it, it is something that we have said for the past 10 years plus on this show, is like lodge culture is everything, because Masonry is universal, but at the same time it's also provincial, as Nick Johnson would used to say, meaning it is hyper local as well as to the lodge building that you join has its own certain flavor. It has its own certain, activities and themes and camaraderie.
And
So
certain je ne sais quoi.
a certain Zenith. I always said that.
but it's and that's what I was trying to get to, because I know we've thrown around the term lodge culture or organizational culture a lot, but we've never defined it for people, right? So it's it's really, when you get down to it, it's a value set, it's potentially a belief system, for stepping outside of lodge culture, a set of behaviors and practices or rituals, taking it even out of the Masonic context, that shape how these different people interact with one another and work together inside a confined organization. So it doesn't just have to be lodge, right? It can be any small group of people that are
empowered by a Grand Lodge to work.
Sure. Have a culture, right? It's the identity of that organization.
Well, and it's also an atmosphere and an energy too. So it's not just tangible things, but there is also.
It depends, right? Some lodges have culture, but they have zippy energy,
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, yeah, another chat that we're in this past week was talking about, like, wouldn't it be cool if there was some sort of baseball card or, some sort of little graphic that you could judge a lodge by certain elements, certain themes, certain things that they do, and say that, well, this lodge is more of they like to go out and socialize lodge, and this lodge over here is more of a traditional observance lodge, and this lodge over here likes to do family, is more family oriented, right? And so you kind of could compare and contrast without having to sample all the goods. I don't know. It's an interesting thought
too. I mean, so years ago we did a bunch of survey data, right? So we ran surveys and things, and we've all, I think, probably surveyed our individual lodges. John, you probably ran one of the largest attempts at regular masonry.
It's time to do it again.
Data, that was truly unbiased, not looking for any answers, and if anything, would fall in the, I don't know, realm of objectivism, even if it looked bad, right? Like, you just looked at the data. And I think some of the things that we saw that came out of some of that data was what values drove a particular Mason and what values drove particular lodges. And I think it bears mentioning that if we're considering talking about the lodge culture, for a lot of folks, it's going to come down to exactly that. What's driving that lodge to be successful in their own way? Culture may eat strategy for breakfast, but it eats green beans for dinner.
That is classic.
Thank you, Eric. Joe's going to drop off now.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. I'll show you.
And I think back to a survey I did a long time ago, and it didn't have like maybe 100 responses or whatever, but I made the critical mistake of designing my survey in a flawed way, which didn't allow a particular outcome to come out on top. And I got an absolutely straight across the board, even like cultural response, which was, I basically asked what was most important to you. And I gave them like 4 options, and it was just split even 25% across the board. It was so bizarre.
Wow, that's fascinating.
It was like, these giant umbrellas: fellowship, ritual, education, or
titles.
Yeah, titles. Something else, right? I can't remember what it was.
Dinners.
But yeah, it was strange. And then as you travel around, you start to witness what other lodge cultures are like. And that's a real eye-opener. Like, if you're a traveling man in the truest sense and you're bouncing around more than just, say, your district, it's eye-opening. And I think that's what makes culture kind of shocking, drives the conversations that we're having tonight. An interest in the culture because maybe the one we have isn't what we like, or maybe we love it. I don't know. We'll see, I guess.
Well, I mean, you just said something really, really striking when it comes to, and it wasn't a dig on people, right? Some people have the wherewithal and opportunity to travel, right? And that's one of the fun parts of being a Mason is that you get to travel and experience Masonry in other places. Every single person on this podcast knows tons of people who have been Masons for 10 or 15 or 20 or more years and have never stepped foot inside of another lodge, right? So not exposing yourself to different cultures is a detriment, right? It really
It
is.
is.
Right? You become a very monocular person and you start to have a monocular view of the world, and it's a shame, right? It's sad.
My wife and I are monoculous.
That's good.
Let's
I
Let's
thought
get
you
to-
were monohippopotamus.
Let's talk about the definition then. So talked a little bit last time. I have helped do some culture design for some organizations as well, and we'll go over an example using one of the tools that I like to use. But you have to define what culture is. And oh my gosh, if you read any business books, if you read 10 business books about culture, you'll get 15 different definitions of what culture is, right? Because, we know it when we see it, but we can't really wrap our arms around it. And some things are more abstract to put together. So I like to pick my favorite definition and hit people over the head with it because, if you can't define it, then you can't really move past it, right? Or play with it. So one thing that I like here, let me share my tab. This is my favorite definition of culture is the set of repeated behaviors of an organization, right? It's something that not just one person does, but multiple people do. And it's not just done once. It is a commonplace thing. It happens more often than not. And it can be both good or bad. You see, there's no judgment applied here. So culture could be good behaviors, it could be bad behaviors, or could be a mix, or could be incentivized to go towards one thing or disincentivized to go towards another. And so that helps me visually see those things. And so what I like about this definition the most is that behaviors are observable. Right? I can see someone doing something. I don't have to try to interpret why they did it, but I can say this actually happened. We have people who visually saw that, this worshipful master yelling at this member, right? Okay, so that's a behavior. And we can actually see, does it happen once? Does it happen often? And then we can make some judgment calls about what do we do with that?
Yes.
Right, Joe?
Yep. It is a routine behavior, and I'm all for it. Yep, I second it.
Yes. You can't. The number of times Joe has yelled at me in his lodge, it's uncountable.
You've never been.
Yes,
Ooh,
there was that one time.
What was that one time?
I think Robert's been there more.
I probably have, but you know what I
Probably.
have missed? I've missed trunk or treat.
Trunk or treat's
Trunk or treat's the bomb.
Trunk or
Oh,
treat is the bomb. We don't do it. I always feel like I'm asking little kids to get in my trunk. It just feels weird to me, like it's an episode of Dexter. But yeah. So I have a question though about
I don't
this.
think Dexter ever
No, but he takes care of people who do those things.
Yes, that is fair. That is fair.
So here's my question about culture and your favorite definition that kind of revolves and is around ideas of behavior. Is there are a bazillion and one mother-in-laws out there who say you can't change a man. And to expand that further, you can't really change behavior.
Or can you?
Or can you? Okay, so my thought on this idea of culture is I've almost never seen without a sort of either hostile takeover or there's just no members left, so a bunch of other guys pluraled and changed the lodge. Is it even possible to change culture? Like you talked about how you've designed cultures for business. Tell me about change. How do you change culture? Maybe not yet, but that's my interest.
What are your thoughts, Joe, before I jump in?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I feel like I like it. It's okay. And yeah, you're right. There are many different definitions of culture, right? Because this is this big amorphous thing. But I think culture for me is I kind of what Jason was talking about a little bit more. It's a step past that. It's the result of a set of repeated behaviors by an organization, right? So
It's an
it's not
outcome.
the outcome or the representation of it. Yeah. So it's something that's palpable and that's noticeable, and people will walk out with a sense of understanding it. And it's not just that repeated, like Joe yelling at people 30 times. That doesn't equate culture, right? It's what happens in that room as a result of those repeated behaviors.
I could not have set this up even more perfect for you
All
guys
the
because I know
people who don't come back.
you haven't seen this before. This tool I'm about to show you, which checks off both what RJ said and what Joe said, as
But
well.
not what Jason said.
Hell no.
That's the trash can. Yes, that's where your opinions go. As you wish. Let's go over to the culture map. That is a tool, like Jason, to
Oh man.
to actually
Somebody's spicy tonight.
both document and or redesign the culture that you have.
Question.
Mr. Martinez, yes.
Dr. Ruark, Joe Martinez, National Enquirer. So can we get it in different colors? Because black and white bothers me.
Well, you can put some nice colorful stickies on it here in a minute.
Okay, continue.
What's your favorite color?
Rainbow.
Mr. Ruark, question.
Do I have a rainbow? Yes. I'll put black for your soul. Yes, Jason.
How many habaneros did you use in your enema tonight?
Not enough, apparently. Okay, so let's talk about how this thing works. All right, so this is a tool by a company called Strategizer, not a sponsor, but here's how this basically works. I have done this as like an as is, like document what you do see, and then do a separate version for the to be, like what do you want it to be. You always start with the behaviors in the middle here. For those listening without the visual, imagine a 3-layered cake. The top layer is outcomes, the middle layer is behaviors, and the bottom layer is enablers and blockers. So the way this works is it's helpful to see what are the behaviors that you can observe today, right? What are the things that you see? I see that people are rewarded for just having the most titles, right? Or getting titles for just attendance, lodge attendance, and not so much for volunteering for things. I see that, the people who volunteer for more things get burned out faster, right? These are all things that you can observe. These are behaviors. And so after you document the behavior, let's just talk about, I'll just document one of those, over volunteerism. Can lead to an outcome of burnout. Okay? So which is exactly what Joe was getting to is there's outcomes, there's results of that behavior. And that is, it is a vertical thing, right? It is something that it's a direct result of that behavior that you see. Okay, so when we're looking at this as is, remember, they are both good behaviors and bad behaviors, or good outcomes and bad outcomes. So we want to try to identify what is enabling this bad behavior, which is leading to this negative outcome, or what's blocking a good behavior, right? Maybe people are being prohibited from speaking up or doing the right thing, right? So you have to actually go back down to the bottom after I've identified over volunteerism is an observable thing. People are stepping up and it's leading to burnout. Why? We have to stop and ask ourselves, well, why? Is it because that maybe one enabler to over volunteerism is there's too many activities?
Not enough dudes.
And the opposite is true. Not enough dudes. Exactly. So there can be multiple.
Something you say often, RJ.
Look who's spicy.
I mean, maybe.
Only on Fridays.
So
do
there be
mine. I put one.
What's
Did you
yours?
say- Did you
mine,
say
the yellow
manja, like eat? What?
Do mine. Do
Too many-
mine.
Oh,
There are too many PMs, therefore nothing gets done.
Yeah, so like, everybody goes to lodges where there's 95 past masters there, and they all say this
Fair
is the way
enough.
stuff should be done, and then nothing ever gets done.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the behavior is really, it's not just there's too many bosses, PMs. It's just that they're too vocal. Okay, because yeah, you can count them, but what are they actually doing? What is their action that they're taking, right? And so too many vocal past masters. Therefore, nothing gets done because everyone's just, well, I think this and I think this, and this was not the way we did it in my year, and blah blah blah, right? So what's enabling that?
Bad leader, or let's say lack of leadership.
What action is happening or is not happening?
Leaders are not leading. The not the grumpy past masters, the actual master or the officer.
Is it lack of gavel control?
Okay.
Right? Maybe, possibly.
yeah. There's got to be a word. Maybe what do you call it when you're too apt to listen to other people?
Consider all viewpoints. Yeah. Right. So you're just
Like too much compromise.
you're trying to appease everyone. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe that's maybe one potential enabler.
Or I know this is one of John's favorites, analysis paralysis. Like you get 45 opinions and you don't know which one to do. So you overthink them all.
Mm-hmm. Right. So these could be multiple reasons why the behavior is happening. Right. And of course, any good, consultant would say, well, you got to find out what your root cause is and figure out a way to work through those.
The true
So
consultant would say it depends.
it depends, and pay me extra to help you solve it. Right.
Now, honest questions for you, John, when you're doing
Yeah.
this for work purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have, I'm sure some of the people that are talking about their own culture in their organization, do you have the people who are the blockers in the room and
It's happened.
that stuff come out while they're discussing it,
I have had that happen once, yeah, and it's awkward, right? And you sometimes need to have a, hey, we have to address the elephant in the room kind of conversation. Right, so you would basically consider the things that are enabling too many vocal bosses or are blocking the opposite, which is, maybe alternate viewpoints or, silencing those, right? Afraid to speak up. Yeah. Other people may be afraid to speak up, for example. So you pick one of these, and then when you actually redesign it, you actually do a different version of this for your 2B, like where you want it to be. You want to change that behavior. And this is the part where I'm saying where you can actually redesign it. Because if we agree that I'm just going to pick one at random, lack of gavel control, that the worshipful master is not gaveling down people who like to talk.
Well, yeah. So you know what you call that?
What's
Too
that?
much brotherhood.
Oh, too much harmony. There's so much harmony in this lodge right now. So much. All the
much
harmony.
Harmony that we lost the war.
like a Hans Zimmer song.
So if we were to redesign it, what we want to do is actually change that enabler. What do we do? Maybe we would train our masters better, right? So maybe improve training for masters to
Lead.
control the room, basically.
Control the gavel.
Mm-hmm.
Is that improve or actually have training?
Yeah, prove/have. Yeah, because some masters, again, now we're getting to the point. This is exactly where we wanted this to go, because we now can identify something we can change, right? We can't change the fact that at the end of the day, nothing gets done. Okay, well, what are you going to do about it? Like, I don't know. Here we are. We're stuck again in another meeting that went long, and everyone felt like they just wanted to talk. But if you deconstruct it, break it down, go to the observable things, and then think about what's actually causing that behavior. Now I can actually do something. I can nudge things in the direction that I want. I can say, well, what if we stopped doing this or started doing this other thing? That is how you design the culture that you want. So you get to a different outcome. Right? I'm getting to a better tomorrow where things do get done. Right? That's the outcome we want to get over here is, oops, close this, lock this down, and say the outcome that we want is much gets done. Right? That's the outcome we want. And we'll do that because we're now improving master's training to control the gavel so that, the speakers are constrained or something to that effect.
Or opinions are managed.
Opinions are, that's a nicer way of saying it.
Opinions are brotherly.
Yeah. So because we did
Never
training,
mind the passive voice.
of course, because we had our training. Oops. Oh man. Master training. Because we had our training, now opinions are managed, which means that now much gets done. Now, this seems like a very oversimplistic example. Yes, it's for the purpose of just kind of walking through it. But now think about those behaviors that you see in your lodge, both good or bad, right? So let's be a happy, positive thing, because maybe there are some things that are working well and we actually want to keep doing those things, right? Maybe there are things that we're not only doing well, we could even do better, right? So the same thing is also true. Questions or thoughts before I go any further?
Question.
Yes,
So,
Dr.
I like
Martinez.
Yes. Not yet. Yeah. So I like the flow where, so when you do it, you have two, right? You have, here's all the crap and here's the antithesis of the crap, and like how you actually have the opposite behaviors to change your culture. Why? Like, I like how we started in the middle in the first one. Why is the other one, why aren't blockers up top? And you know what I mean? Like, you start with, when you go to, hey, this is how we're going to do things differently. Do we start with the blockers or the enablers, right? So, and then work our way down to a favorable outcome.
Oh, beautiful question. Because we can only change the things at the bottom.
Okay. Okay.
With the hypothesis that if we improve our master training, then we'll see opinions managed, which will get better outcomes. But we won't know until we start at upstream. We have to start upstream first. Okay. Because that's the only thing we can run an experiment on. There's only one thing we can actually try different so that we will see if the behaviors change. And if not, well, we tried that. Let's try something else, because we've got, 4 or 3 other potential root causes that we can try to fix.
Another question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. When this is done for organizations, whether it's lodge or not, is there some sort of level setting or some sort of come to Jesus moment that people are expected to do with themselves before they walk into this room to start that? Like, hey, I'm a crappy communicator, or I'm an overbearing leader, or like there's some traits that people need to identify amongst themselves that they're supposed to be sharing when these conversations.
That's such a good question. So a couple things come to mind. So where I thought you were going to go is something I have seen come up is, well, we've got a lot of things wrong with our organization. So there's so many bad things we could do. Where do we start, right? Or we have the whole team come in and do it all at once, and everyone's just vocal. But yeah, the other side of that coin is setting some ground rules. If you know that RJ is the problem, then maybe you do this exercise without RJ in the room.
Yeah, but
And
does
then-
that fix RJ though?
Say again?
That doesn't fix RJ.
It doesn't, but it lets you have the psychological safety to be able to speak up, in a safe space.
Yeah, and if it is identified that I would be the problem in the situation, then okay, so like in Illinois, our constitution and bylaws for the state, I don't know how many lodges pay attention to this or if the Grand Lodge pays attention to what lodges are doing, but you're supposed to have a committee on grievances in each lodge. So that not like if that were the case, right? Like you would be able to figure this out as a committee on grievance. If I was the
That's
prop.
interesting.
Was
You know-
it? Is that like a Festivus lodge?
It's the
Yeah, sure.
best.
Yeah. And like you could essentially come to a brother,
The
right?
Committee
You're
of Strength.
You're supposed to come to the brother to their face, without talking behind their backs.
You're
say,
supposed
"Hey."
to what?
Yeah, you're supposed to. And say to them, hey, we're having this problem. We've identified you as a cause of this problem. We need you to either do A, B, or C, right? And just be upfront. And sometimes that, that's probably, I'm always accused of being super blunt. But, if somebody came to me and said, like, you're the secretary of 2 lodges and you're the secretary of 2 lodges.
Stop
and the
looking
way
at the
you-
chat when you're trying to be meta.
I'm sorry, it popped up. You're the secretary of 2 lodges and you're trying to control this lodge, like this other lodge, or whatever the case is, right? Well, what's the solution? You need to step down as secretary, or you need to do this. So I think there is a value in kind of pulling somebody like, if I were in the meeting, of course, that would be very uncomfortable. But like you said,
Sure.
I think we can do this absolutely without, problem people being present.
I have a comment to that, illustrious brother RJ. So I think it depends, right? Like John, you do this for work purposes for the most part, right? So
Mhm.
then we have lodge, right? So we have businesses, and then we have Masonic lodges, like organizations, that volunteer organizations that do X, Y, and Z, and yada yada. One of them is you can be selective. So in a business organization, if we've identified a problem, that problem is RJ. That's an easy fix, right? It's like, okay, we get rid of RJ. So now you've got on the
A
other
lot
hand,
of paperwork, though.
it could be, or you just start making stuff up and write him up for things that he would have done if he was a bad person. But I digress. But no, what I'm saying is, then we have a Masonic lodge where it's all people who don't have to be there at all, right? And things happen only when they're there, and people show up, and people do things, and people give of their time and stuff. And now we're saying, hey, we want to have this culture map conversation about how to fix RJ, or identifying that RJ is the problem, but RJ is not there. So you can't just fire RJ. You know what I mean? Because RJ is not going to go away because he's volunteering to be there, right? That's where my question comes from.
So I love it because, yes, if you can adapt most of these processes, because back to the definition, the set of repeated behaviors of an organization, not a business. You could do this for your family. Why is it that we always end up yelling at each other, at 6 o'clock? Well, maybe it's because we haven't had dinner yet. Yeah, maybe we're hangry, Then you can just do the same exact exercise.
Every single question you bring up, the answer is going to be because we all have kids. So
Yes.
that's the answer.
So solution. Get rid of the kids.
Boarding school.
The fire department
Kids.
won't take them anymore. Sorry.
See RJ's previous comment about Dexter episodes.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, you have to think about it. It's not just a for-profit driven thing. It's dealing with people, right? Organizational dynamics. How do people work together? It's psychology too. I mean, it's incentives, it's behaviorals, it's biases, it's all of the above wrapped into that. And so the goal is, because culture is hard and it eats strategy for breakfast, but still has green beans for dinner. then how do you nudge it in the direction that you want? Because you're not going to fix it overnight.
Well, I think in like
But you
a
can nudge it.
cultural, like in terms of a business, let's say, you're driven by profits, and a company's culture can drive profit or destroy it.
Right.
You'll see that shift with the tides of political ideologies across the globe. In fact, one of our chats said, not going to get really political or anything, but he said, think about Disney in 2014 compared to 2024. Totally different
Right.
culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't agree more. I mean, you've got much more of a culture of DE&I and all of these kinds of things that have driven the company. And by and large, those are cultural identifiers that are valued by the majority of the consumers of their content. And so that drives them. But it doesn't really help us in the realm of a lodge, right? Because we're not driven by a profit. But I think back to your graphic when we talked about the lodge and the means of production. Your means of production, you had this really cool graph that you put up, and you talked about how a lodge makes masons. And if that's the profit, then I think it helps us sort of reorganize how we'll think about the beneficial way or the beneficial culture of a lodge, the way it should be in order to benefit the lodge in terms of gaining lodge profits, which would be members.
Sure.
Does that make any kind of sense? Maybe not.
It does. I have a feeling about it though. That's more where we were going with at the beginning, and absolutely feel free to disagree. I think that in and of itself, we're talking about this stuff in a vacuum, right? Like everything that John talked about, right? All in a vacuum, right? What we don't have are the defined things, those sets of people, this particular lodge or this organization where we actually know the problem. So these are all abstracts, but back to RJ's point, the culture of a lodge could be that their profit is in generating new members, right? You have a lodge 5 miles down the road where their culture is driven around their profit is in enhancing the experience of masonry to their members. You go 5 miles further down the road, you have a culture based on a lodge that has the mission of, hey, we want to be the most fun lodge anywhere in the United States, right?
Yes.
And that's what they're driven for. So those things are all, it goes back to mission and vision, right?
So
what's important?
What if you actually said, you started with the outcome first, right? And said, if I'm doing a clean slate and I'm not even trying to fix something, but I say the outcome that I want is, making this up for for a better example, we want to be a TO lodge. Like that is the outcome that we want, right? Or we want to be a family-friendly lodge. Then what behaviors do we want to see? And then what can we do to make that happen? No. So you could design it top down, right? If I said, we're a brand new lodge, we're going to be more family-friendly, then what are the observable things that we need to have more? We need to plan for family nights. We need to plan for game nights. We need to plan for cookouts, right? We need to plan for movie nights. And then to enable that, we need to make sure that we have all the materials, we have people who are ready to volunteer for those things, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, you absolutely could start with your big vision, like you said. And
I do like how you kind of codified TO and a family style lodge as diametric.
Whoa, that was a big Freudian slip there, wasn't it?
Right, but and you say this half jokingly, but then again you don't. It's and I put it in the chat. It's very hard for Masons to hear that you can actually curate your culture, right? You can take your lodge and I did say it. It could look like this today and have this particular culture, but if you've got the people that are there and the people that show up and the people that want to do masonry or whatever it is your mission is, you can find a core group of people that want to curate that culture and push that out forward, right? And by doing that, we go back to the business model of, okay, well, maybe RJ's not a great fit for our lodge, right? He wants to do this kind of stuff, and everybody else wants to do this. So what do?
There you go.
The needs of the many.
If RJ is a blocker to the behavior that you want, deal with that blocker and say, bye. See ya.
No. I'm kidding.
He just ghosted himself. I love it.
I was gone. I was bye-bye.
You're back.
How do you do that in a volunteer organization?
I'm glad you asked. You have to not care sometimes.
Ooh, you have to disrupt harmony to create harmony.
Yeah, it's rough. It is rough.
Yeah.
I think there are always answers to this that they just require us to be Masons. And what I mean by that is, if I feel like somebody's not a great fit, if we're doing our due diligence, as we have like harped on forever, and even if we've never always done it, we know at least the right thing to do, which is, if a lodge has a vision and a culture and a mission, right, and we know what it is, and somebody comes to it, you have to, at a point, ask yourself, will this person disrupt this lodge culture?
Ooh,
And if the answer is yes, recommend a different lodge.
Then they're blocking that behavior. Exactly.
I mean, there are lodges that I feel that I have personally seen. I can't say where they are because that would be, bad form, but I would say that I've watched a lodge be a thing, like kind of social and up and coming, go into a TO model, and then sort of become infiltrated and turn into a very interesting sort of amalgamation of just cigars and whiskey.
So I actually got to see this firsthand with a lodge that I go to, and I'm not going to name names, but when I first started going to this lodge, they were super duper spiritual. It's, contemplative time at the beginning, candle lit everything, and you got to be in tux and tails, and the Masonic experience was the most important thing. And this is where I think one of the other things that we can't change or envision, and John would love your comments on this, is what happens when the generations swap, right? So you go to something 10 years ago, 10 years later, you've got a whole new group of people, right? So that culture is going to change organically into something completely different. And that lodge, as you know it, is no longer has the same culture. And I saw that happen over the course of years. I'm like, wow, I go to this lodge and they just like to drink and make fun of each other and say stupid crap. And, I don't get the same experience that I did before. So I stopped going, and it happened in less than 10 years. It was just like, once all the guys that I knew that were in charge left, they never came back. And this is what we were left with. And it was a completely different culture and experience.
So it's already changing. It's already being nudged into a different direction. So it's whether you allow it to happen and don't care how it ends up, or you observe the change as it happers and go from there. So this is an interesting question.
Yeah, I want to touch on this for sure,
because I'm glad that Berkey brought this up. Is okay. Let's say RJ is the troublemaker.
Bro, I was literally typing a response to this in YouTube, but go ahead.
Nobody likes RJ. He keeps showing up because he's got nothing better to do. And he's like, all right, let's do masonry.
He alienates candidates.
Yeah.
There are candidates that just want to go in, eat green beans, and, hang out. And RJ's like, no, have you heard about quantum mechanics? And they're just like, bruh.
Let me talk to you about my Lord and Savior, thermodynamics. Okay. So
identified. Yeah.
You can't kick a brother out of lodge if he hasn't committed a Masonic offense. That's not right. So there's many kicking out of the lodges, but I think what you may be talking about here is like, hey, don't come to lodge.
Yeah. How do you
and that is
RJ
totally true. You can't do that.
No.
Well, you can do.
Actually,
Illinois has code 372, which says that any member of a lodge can go to the master and express a concern about sitting in lodge with that person, and the worshipful master can then just say, "I'm sorry. Somebody has said that it would not be, conducive to the lodge meeting if you sat in lodge tonight. I can't let you come in." That's the end of the story.
Now, Virginia is a little bit different. So what you're saying is in Illinois, the master can bar any member.
Well, if the let's say visiting member to be on the same side.
No, a member of that. So your lodge, you're the master, and this is why I was getting, because in Virginia I had to deal with this and I had to read the law and figure it out. So in Illinois, you're saying if you're the master and the three of us are members of your lodge, John can go to you and say, "Joe's a douche. I don't want him sitting in lodge." You're allowed to kick me out?
I need to read the code 372. I'm pulling it up right now. And I'll let you know in a moment.
Because in Virginia, it's so same scenario, except for John and Jason are visitors. They're members of other lodges and they came to visit, right? So yeah, I can go to you and say, "I don't want to sit in lodge with Jason. I don't want him here." And
that's why you stick me outside.
That's why you go outside the door. That's right, brother. So, but yeah, so you could do that with a visitor, and the master doesn't need to give a reason to the person. He just says, "Hey, sorry, you can't come in tonight." And that's the end of that. But going back to Berkey's thing, look, nothing that at least I talked about was, "Hey, you're not allowed to be a member of this lodge anymore." It's not what we're saying. What right. I was kind of leaning towards, the kind of things that happen, and I think all four of us have experienced this, is you are part of a culture and a person is not a part of that culture. So at some point they're going to get the hint and self-select themselves out, right? So, and say, maybe I'm going to go find another lodge, or this isn't more my speed. Maybe I'm going to look elsewhere. And that's usually what happens more than, a round table of people getting together and saying, "RJ, you can't come into our lodge."
Right.
Or you come in and try to disrupt the culture, and the lodge as a whole pushes back.
So I have to correct myself. Code 372 is, it is the privilege of every master mason in good standing to visit a lodge, subject, however, to the right of the lodge, whether chartered or under dispensation, or any member thereof, to object to his admission as a visitor. In every case of objection to visitation, the master retains the authority to sustain or overrule such objection. So, yeah, for visitors, I should say, I don't think you can. There's no way to kick out an actual member of that lodge.
Yeah.
But doesn't the master ruling govern the lodge and have the authority to?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so.
Restrict anyone from entering his lodge?
I don't know. I guess that depends on how big your stones are, and you're going to.
Not a Grand Lodge representative in Virginia.
In Virginia, you're not. The Grand Lodge representatives are excluded from being prohibited, which is an interesting.
Oh wow!
We're all on the level.
That's
why there's so many of them, right, Jason?
Mm-hmm.
Yikes!
Yeah, I believe that extends to Grand Lodge committeemen as well.
Fair. All right. So bringing this home, this is a great example to dive deep on, to say, well, what could you do, right, to change that lodge culture, right? We went down this hypothetical rabbit hole, and we're pulling up code and Masonic law, and then what other things you could do, other than just addressing it, right? Maybe try to have it self-select out. I mean, there's just so many ways that you could attempt to nudge the behavior in the direction that you want so that you get the better outcomes. And I think that's a framework that I like, that is helpful for me. And it's not just a business framework. It's at any organization, which is like 2 or more people. It could be done at church. It could be done at home. It could be done at work. It could be done in lodge. And so think about that. Do you have the culture that you want in your lodge? And if not, how could you design it to where you want to be? Jason, start taking us home.
Understand that sometimes you can't. You could be a force for good and a force for change, and
be the change.
Be the change.
Yeah. And sometimes it doesn't take, and sometimes the lodge culture is so entrenched, and the brethren who are a part of that culture don't want to change it. And that's okay. It means maybe that's not the lodge for you.
Yeah.
But I think you start cultivating a culture by finding like-minded brothers and fellows. And you start congregating with them and sharing ideas with them. And then as you get a group, you will gravitate toward, something more official, whether it be part of a particular lodge or a new lodge you charter or something along those lines. And so the key is to start having conversations with brethren who hold the same ideals and the same values, because if you get a critical mass of brethren who have those same ideals and have that same desire for change and culture, that's going to be a lot more effective than just trying to go it solo and ramming things down everybody's throats.
Good points all around. Joe?
What? Culture, yes. So no, this is awesome. And I come from a place on the work side of things where we hold culture to be very, very important for our organization, and it actually defines how we do things. But back to the Masonic part of it, one thing that we talked about that wasn't part of your awesome culture map was establish your identity first, right? Figure out who your lodge wants to be. And if it doesn't want to be anything, we'll see you in 2040. You know what I mean? But you got to have an identity, whether
No,
it's,
we won't.
and we won't, but you gotta have some sort of identity, and then just be honest with each other, right? If we're all supposed to be brothers and we're all supposed to be on the level and we're all supposed to be able to whisper good counsel, establish everyone's strengths and weaknesses, right? Like, these people are great at this, these people are not great at this, and just be honest with each other when we talk about those things, as you start to establish that identity, and then go forth and try to do those things that actually in your culture that answer those identity questions for your lodge. And then come back a few months later and see if it's working. Are you getting more members? Do you have people that are staying longer at meetings? Are you getting the engagement that you want by identifying this identity? And if it doesn't work, circle back and do something else. Or like Jason said, sometimes you have this really big lodge and you have this cultural subset that they'll just break off and go do something else because that's what they need to do, right? To establish their own identity. So, try different things. But again, at the end of the day, figure out, if you are a decision maker in your lodge or about to be a decision maker, figure out what the identity of your lodge is and work from there. Boom.
Nice. Boom.
Boom.
Arge.
Well, I don't have a great answer other than because I feel like lodges today, it's hard to get a grip on a culture of your lodge if the lodge isn't healthy to begin with. Like, if I were to ask you to envision a bunch of people on a boat bailing water and their teamwork around this, and then envision another image of, I don't know, some people winning a football game and how their teamwork is, right? Like, one is based in fear and trying to save something, and one is based in, like, just generally good things and success, right? And I feel like so many lodges out there today are the boats bailing water, and their rallying call, their mission it's hard to come to because they're just trying to survive. And so I think for a lot of guys listening, it might help us to think about, as we think about missions, so that we can develop a lodge culture that's more than just trying to save something. It's got to encompass more than that. And you have to be willing to make a lot of hard decisions about the future, right? And so there's nothing new to the listeners of this program. I loved, John, I like your 3-tiered cake model. I like the way that works, and it makes sense to me. I think most of our guys out there, I think you probably know what your lodge culture is. It's probably nothing crazy or sounding awesome or eccentric. It's probably pretty basic right now, and it's like, let's survive, let's make the rent, let's pay the temple board, and unfortunately, I feel like until we can not focus on those things, there's not a lot for a lodges to rally around. Sorry to be the downer there, but
No, I mean, that's fair. And that ties back to what Joe was saying about, like, if you come back 10 years later and it's completely different without someone nudging it, like, then it just happened, right? It's if you don't choose to plan, that's also a choice.
Yep.
You plan to choose.
No action is action.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, that's a great point, right? Is that this is if you want to be serious about it. Otherwise, it's going to happen. It's going to happen regardless. And so whether you want to do something about it, it's a framework that I like. It's helpful. It gets people thinking about specific things to try. And by the way, they could all be wrong, right? All your experiments could fail miserably. What are you going to do, right? You tried to change the culture and it didn't quite end up the way you want. But then that's just, maybe new leadership, new line. Try it again next year. There might be something to do. Or, as we said earlier, maybe you're the problem. All right. Maybe you're just not a fit for that culture. There's too many things to fit, to change. And the lodge is happy with the culture they have. So maybe it's not you, it's me. I just want to be friends. I'll go date someone else. I'll go to another lodge at that point.
Men are from Mars, lodges are from Venus.
I like it. We'll roll with it.
No, I don't know. I was just trying to. You were talking about relationships, and I started
Yes.
thinking, how much of a thing.
Okay.
Anyway.
So your goal for this week is to take every romance book and try to change it into a Masonic context, right?
Look out! I got nothing better to do. So
AI, here I come. All right, good
Knights
show,
and
good
Flyers,
topic.
stay tuned.
I hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you next week. Thank you very much for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.